You're watching the award-winning GHS-TV, a nationally recognized student television station.
Hello, and welcome to this week's special edition of Crosstalk. I'm your host, Jamaia Chase. Dogs have been a man's best friend for thousands of years, and over time, humans have trained the loyal companions to perform many roles, including companionship, assisting police, and aiding disabled people. But in order to get to this point, dogs must be taught, and today we'll look at 3 different types of trainings. First up is house training, the most popular form. I sat down with Terry Harris from West Tennessee K9 to talk about this specialized training. Mr. Harris, thank you so much for talking with us today.
Very welcome.
Can you explain house dog training and what all a dog learns during its course?
Absolutely. So house dog training primarily is teaching the dog manners, teaching the dog to be calm and quiet when it's supposed to be calm and quiet. When it's time to play, it's time to play, and teaching the dog rules and guidelines for the house.
There is a notion that house training is one of the easiest types of trainings. Do you agree?
House training as far as potty training, or house training as far as teaching a dog to be good in the house?
A little bit of both.
Okay, so potty training is about a schedule, and it can be easy. It's about scheduling the dog's potty times with its time that it eats. I would say house training a dog, or training a dog to live in your home, can have its challenges because you're teaching a creature that can't understand English, doesn't really understand your words, different cues and behaviors to live and coexist with you.
Is there one skill that is easier for a dog to master?
If I had to pick a skill, probably the one I would pick was sit, because most dogs that come in know how to sit. Everybody works on that. Dogs are really good at mastering skills themselves. To them, their play is our annoyance. So if I could say they can master one skill, it's probably being a good companion.
What about age? Is there a certain age that a dog is more receptive to learning?
Yeah, so dog learning comes in several stages. The first stage is imprinting, and it starts soon after the puppies are born. The more things you can put the puppies in, conditions, sound, sight, smells, things like that, the puppy starts imprinting. So from birth to about 3 months old is a really good imprinting stage, very important. Everything that happens to a dog between birth and 3 months old is somewhat permanent. So that's a very important stage. Then you have the next stages, which is about 3 to 6 months, is another really big absorbing stage. Dogs can be trained very quickly. When you get over 6 months, and especially over a year, dogs kind of have their entrenched behaviors. That's when you get the jumping, the bad behaviors, or the good behaviors, whichever you've taught them. Then you go into a behavior modification for adult dogs a year and up.
Well, I can assume that when you first meet a new dog, trust is an issue. What are some of the techniques you use to form a bond?
So believe it or not, the best technique to build a bond and trust with a dog is just spending time with it. A lot of times we'll sit in the training room, especially if it's a scared or fearful dog, and we'll just not have a lot of interaction with it and just let it kind of take everything in. Dogs do what we call passive learning, so they take the environment around them and based on different stressors make decisions. We can use food to build a bond with them, and believe it or not, the visual tie with the leash and the handler is also building a bond with the dog.
So you do group training as well. How do you get the dogs familiar with each other in this setting?
So that's a really great question. The way we do that is teaching them something called none of your business. Okay, so what's going on around you is absolutely none of your business. So there's no sniffing nose to nose. you're teaching dogs to coexist around each other without reacting to each other. A lot of problem with dogs and their behavior is they instinctively react to their outside environment. What we're teaching dogs, especially in a group environment, is that you don't react to that thing outside. So there is no real introduction. We teach the dogs to be around each other without putting pressure. So if you have a dog sniffing nose to nose or nose to rear, it puts a lot of pressure on the dog. And the dog who's being sniffed thinks they have to react to that. So the none of your business rules apply.
I'm sure that it takes a dog a while to obey a command.
It doesn't really. It's up to the handler or the owner. So you can make a dog really understand if something's good or bad. Dogs learn by association. So the dog's going to associate something good with this behavior or something bad with this behavior. We talked about pressure earlier in the group classes, okay? So the dog is going to always give into pressure. It's up to you to create that environment. So if you're rewarding a dog for good behavior over and over again, the dog is going to be more likely to do that behavior. However, if the dog is doing unwanted behavior or takes that behavior too far, then there has to be some type of consequence. Just like us in life, we have to have consequences for our actions.
How long is the typical training course?
They vary. We do anything from an hour to several weeks, going back to the age. So the younger the dog, the less attention span they have. So you have a 3 or 4 month old puppy, they don't have a very long attention span. They can't really retain a lot of information over a long period of time. And there's not a lot of behavior to change. We're molding behavior. If you take a 3-year-old dog that has some aggression issues, something like that, then you're going to talk about 2, 3, 4 weeks, because now it's going to take longer to change that behavior. Not only do we have to teach the dog what not to do through correction and consequences, but we have to teach the dog, hey, don't do this, but do that, and that takes some time.
Can you talk about the importance of building a relationship with your dog?
It's absolutely important. So we want the dog to look to us for everything. We want to be the center of their world, good or bad. If you look at your parents, most of our parents are the center of our world. Something happens to them, we're upset. Something good happens, we're happy. That's the way we want our dogs to look at us. We want them to be the center. We want us to be the center of their world, and having that relationship is what does that. In the training course, we do that with a lot of food. We have this fancy stuff called chicken, and that's what we give the dog. We get canned chicken because it's stinky, and the dog really likes that. So they're like, hey, if I do this, you're going to give me a paycheck. And we're teaching dogs like we are the center of the world.
Well, Mr. Harris, this was a great conversation. I learned so much, and I'm sure our viewers did too.
Good, thank you.
We have to take a short break, but when we come back, we'll turn our focus to service dog training.
GHS-TV started in 1982, and it was just a couple of cameras, a couple of on-air personality, and it's really grown into what you see today. It's a multi-million-dollar studio with top-of-the-line technology.
Being able to operate, all of the machinery in the control room, being able to use all of our software and hardware that we have around the studio is a great skill, because this is top-of-the-line equipment.
I feel like this class has brightened my horizon. It's something that I never thought I would be doing, especially as a student.
GHS-TV is probably one of the most hands-on experiences a student will ever get in their lifetime.
Welcome back to Crosstalk. Nothing really has just the vibe that we have here.
Especially after you finished, you get a real rush of, wow, I just did that.
By the time a student graduates from Germantown High School, they will know pretty much every position there is, from producing to directing to on-air work.
You learn time management, you learn organization, you learn how to work with people, how to better communicate with people.
We put a lot on them, and they have to be able to have the responsibility and the knowledge to get everything that we ask them.
I had very little experience, so in the past 3 years, the skills that I've learned have absolutely exponentially grown.
The class has actually helped me figure out that I want to go to college for journalism.
When a student graduates, they are the best possible version of themselves that they can be.
Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow.
For more information about the Kappa program, visit ghskappa.com or call 755-7775. You're watching the award-winning GHS-TV, a nationally recognized student television station.
Service dogs are the eyes, the ears, and sometimes the hands for people with special needs, leading them to a more independent life. I continued my conversation with Mr. Harris from West Tennessee K9 to talk about service dog training. Mr. Harris, many people confuse service dogs with therapy dogs, but they play two completely different roles. What is the difference?
They absolutely do, and you see a lot of that now. You see a lot of emotional support dogs, therapy dogs, service dogs kind of intertwining. The ADA guidelines kind of set out, they set out the specific rules for what defines a service animal. The biggest difference is service dogs have a role they perform for a disabled person. First, you have to have a disability. And then you have to have a dog that performs a service or has a designated role, something it does for that disabled person.
Does the size of a service dog matter?
Technically no, but in reality yes. So if you have a stability dog that's holding you up, it can't be a Chihuahua. It can't be a really small dog. It depends on what service it's performing. Also, if you have like a diabetic alert dog, you don't want a Great Dane to do that because it's hard to get them in airplanes and in cars and things like that. So there's no limit or regulation on size, but practicality says that it does make a difference in size.
Well, every dog cannot be a service dog. Can you tell me some of the requirements the dog must have?
I would say first and foremost, you have to have a very confident dog. Because it's going to be around sights and smells, different textures. It's going to be around a lot of things happening, crowds of people, things that dogs normally would move away from. So we want a dog that's going to be willing to move toward that. So confidence is a big one. We also want to have drive. We want to have a dog that's driven to work, that's driven to we talked about pleasing the handler, pleasing the owner earlier. This dog has to have an extra willingness to please. And just like with people, it has to have a really good work ethic, so it has to really like to work.
Can you talk about the vest that the dog wears, which is like a uniform?
I can. So based on the ADA guidelines, there's no vest required for dogs. You can have a service dog out in public, no vest is required. We put vests on them because they make him more easily identifiable. This dog is performing a service. You talked about in an earlier conversation before we went on about dogs putting on the vest and we're ready to work. It's kind of like when we wear different shoes for different occasions. So when we go to church, we wear church shoes. You have on some fancy pretty shoes, but you wouldn't go running in those shoes. So it's the same thing when the dog puts on the vest, it's like, okay, we're ready to do something. Dogs learn everything by association, so it associates this vest with performing a task and really does kind of changes the dog personality and the way the dog is willing to work.
Well, a service dog must be certified. Can you walk us through their process?
I absolutely can. So a service dog, there is no technical certification, believe it or not. Now, if you have a diabetic alert dog, you want to send them somewhere where they train diabetic alert dogs. You don't want to have some person down the street say, this is what I do. So the people who are training these dogs absolutely do have to have a certification or some type of experience in the field, proven experience. But the dogs themselves, there is no certification. It's really something that they're working on changing because the dogs that are doing service dog work really need to have some type of certification, qualification, something to set them apart from all the other dogs.
Each dog must be trained in specific skills according to their owner's disabilities. How do your classes work around this?
So first the dog is trained. This is something that's kind of not well known. The dog is trained first usually in obedience. We'll do some things to begin with to steer that dog in the right direction depending on what they're going to do. And depending on the owner's disability really depends on how we're going to train the dogs. One, we have to make that dog really solid in public, okay? Once the dog is solid in public and can be around people without interacting with people, without with impulse control, so every time it sees a little child running by screaming, it doesn't go toward it. Then we bring the owners in. And then the owners work the dog in a very secure environment, very safe environment, very controlled environment. And the dog learns to work there, and then we start to add distractions. So based on the disability, we may start here in the training room, we may start down at the mall. It just depends on the person's level of disability and mobility.
Well, being a service dog is such an important job because they spend most of their times helping others. How do you prepare them for this?
Prepare the dogs for that?
Yes.
They don't know the difference. That's their job. That's their world. Dogs are very good at adapting. That's what makes them survive. If you have a dog in the streets, like that dog will adapt to survive. It'll learn where it can get food. It'll learn where it can get much needed affection. It'll learn what to stay away from. So you're taking the dog's natural drives and abilities and steering them toward this or toward that. So if you have a dog that runs the fence all day long after another dog, that's what it's learned to do with its day. If you have a dog that's steered towards service, that's just part of the dog's life. They don't know any different. They're going to go in the direction we steer them, and we steer them in the direction based on their natural drives.
Let's say I have a service dog. Where is he allowed in and out?
So that's kind of a tricky question. Technically, they're allowed everywhere, but really they aren't. So before you came, I was reading up on the ADA guidelines just to make sure I didn't get anything terribly wrong. I'm sure I'll mess something up. So a couple places that can say service dogs aren't allowed: churches, airplanes, any place like theaters where it's going to cause a disruption or it's going to cause a tripping hazard, or if there was has to be a mass exit, the dog might cause some problems. What people cannot do is deny you as a disabled person by having this animal assist you. Does that make sense? So if the animal comes in and is creating a disturbance, or is smelly, or is using the bathroom on the floor, or even is if you're terrified of dogs, making this person uncomfortable, and the business owner can't rectify that, can't make you comfortable as a customer while I'm accommodating you with the service animal, they can be asked to leave. Very nicely asked to leave, but they can be asked to leave.
Although service dogs are used to protect, they still must maintain a good behavior. How do you make sure the dogs are protective without too much aggressiveness?
Well, if you're talking about protection dogs specifically, it's actually a learned behavior. So I have 3 protection dogs. They're very well trained, but you can come to my house and have a seat and pet them, and all I have to do is say a word and turn them on. So the dogs actually aren't aggressive. It's a trained behavior. We take something they naturally like to do, a drive to bite. We build that up and we teach them, like, when I say this, you do it. If I don't say do it, you just don't take it upon yourself. The first thing they learn after they learn to bite is to learn to stop biting. So if they go to bite someone, no, don't do that. So you don't leave it up to the dog. And the dogs that are really well-trained bite dogs, or even now police dogs are getting into more socialized dogs that can be taken a lot more places, it's a very controlled behavior.
If one was to train their own dog, they would still need professional help. Why is that?
Well, that's true and not so true. Most people, they don't have any training in how to train dogs. Some people just have a natural skill at it. As far as the ADA guidelines go, there's no requirement that you use a trainer. You can completely train the dog yourself. However, there are going to be some things you don't know how to do. As a trainer, I've been training my entire life, but there's still some things, some stumbling blocks, and I have mentors I go to learn those things. If you ever think that you're the best at anything, or if you ever think I can handle this all by myself, there's a good chance, almost 100% chance, that you're not correct. If you don't get people to help you, and if you don't reach out for mentors and people who know more than you, then you're already starting out behind.
Well, Mr. Harris, thank you again for discussing such important topics with us today.
You're very welcome.
We have to take another break, but when we come back, we'll take a look at what it takes to be the sheriff's top dog. Stay tuned.
We see the potential in every single student.
That sounds like a confession to me.
I love watching these kids as they start as freshmen in high school and watching them mature and grow.
At last, my right arm is complete again!
The theater program at GHS, it's something special.
Is very intensive, it's very interactive.
When a student starts here their freshman year, they start with Introduction to Theater. And after that year, they have a choice to either go into acting or technical theater. And then after that, they join our production workshop class. It's the class that is completely run by students.
The students do mostly everything. We build the sets, we do lighting, we make the costumes, we do the shows.
It's very fun. I mean, everybody's very supportive of each other.
Now we're all in this together. It's taught me so much about how to act and how to have a stage presence.
Not only are we teaching the students the skills that they need to be a great performer or a great stage manager or a wonderful lighting designer, we're teaching them skills that they're going to be able to apply to whatever they do in their life.
You guys are fabulous!
This department not only makes wonderful theater, but more importantly, this department makes wonderful people.
For more information about the Kappa program, visit GHS-Kappa.com or call 755-7775. You're watching the award-winning GHS-TV, a nationally recognized student television station.
Welcome back to Crosstalk. I'm Jamaia Chase. More and more law enforcement officers are turning to K-9 units for assistance in the field. Here in Shelby County, the Sheriff's Office has its own training academy for its four-legged deputies. I spoke with Sergeant Ray Brenner and Patrolman Andy Gator to get an inside look on what it takes to be a part of this elite unit. Sergeant Brenner and Patrolman Gator, thank you so much for speaking with us today.
Glad to be here.
Sergeant Brenner, what characteristics or abilities do you look for in a K-9 deputy?
What I do is we look for confidence, courage, and the drives in a dog. Their hunt drive, their prey drive is mainly what we look for.
Mr. Gaither, what about you?
Pretty much the same thing. Looking for a dog that is really, he has an attitude that can do the job for us.
How many dogs are currently a part of the K-9 unit?
Overall, we have about 15. That's including bomb dogs, narcotic dogs, and patrol dogs. It's basically two breeds. We use in law enforcement basically it's the German Shepherd and the Belgian Malinois, and they're both. The reason they are popular in law enforcement is due to their intense drives, and they're working dogs, and they have the ability to cover the stuff that we're looking for out of the training.
When does the training begin? At what age?
Normally about a year and a half. That's about the youngest we like to start with.
How often do they train? Is it one-on-one or as a group?
After initial training, we train in a group. We have a training day, and the minimum that we train is 16 hours a month.
Mr. Gaither, can you walk us through your training program?
The first thing we start with is obedience. The dog has to listen and mind us. It's a liability and a tool that we use, so we have to make sure that we're doing it the right way.
What are some of the most important techniques you use when training them?
Reward. The dog, just like us, when we do something good, we like to be rewarded or told good job. So all these, our partners, they work for a reward. Most of the time it's something simple like a ball. So when they do good, we reward them.
Basically it's covered positive reinforcement is basically what we try to use.
Well, safety is one of the most important key factors in training. How do you ensure that both you and the dog are safe on duties?
Everything we try to do is always geared towards safety. protect not only us but the citizens also that we're insured to protect. When it comes to training, sometimes we have padded suits, anything like that to protect us. We know the responsibilities, and a lot of times accidents do happen, but we try to take every precaution we can to ensure that nothing happens.
Sergeant Brenner, are there any requirements that the dog must have in order to get out on the field?
Yes. What initial when I go look at a dog, we go through some. I check it for the drives. We do like slick floors, steps, see if the dog has any problems going up and down steps. And then once initially we get the dog back, I have to pair it with the handler, and then we go out and train.
Mr. Gaither, can you talk about some of the scenarios that these dogs are called on?
When it comes to training part of it, we try to simulate anything that we might encounter once we're certified and we're working in the streets. From searching buildings, searching cars, vehicle pursuits, anything like that we might encounter to make sure that we're prepared for it.
Sergeant Brenner, does other agencies always ask to use a K-9 unit?
Yes, ma'am, they have. We work well with the other agencies around. If they don't have one available, we've been called out to assist, and so it's a good working relationship.
I'm sure that taking care of a K-9 officer is not cheap. How much does it cost?
Anywhere right now they're about $85,000 to $9,000 per dog, and then you have vet bills, food, and it all adds up.
Where does that money come from? Is there some kind of fundraiser that is being held?
Yes, ma'am. Right now they're paid through taxpayers, basically out of the budget. But we just now got a 501(c) lined up where people can make donations that can contribute of equipment, purchase dogs, food, vet bills, and all. It would really help out.
I've heard that the relationship between an officer and his dog is a unique bond. Do you agree?
And then some. Sometimes we spend more time with our partners than we do our own family. We're with them at least 8 hours a day for our normal shift. In training hours, we go over 8 hours. And most of the time the officers are very dedicated, so we're doing it on our own time. So we spend a lot of time with them. They entrust themselves to us, and so we entrust ourselves to them to be able to make it a unique bond.
What about you, Sergeant Brenner?
Same way, same thing. I mean, we get so close to these dogs. I mean, they're our loyal partners, and we spend so much time with them. It's basically just like a family member.
And I'm sure that losing a K-9 officer is like losing one of your own.
Yes, I have a retired one now. I haven't lost him yet, but now Deputy Gaither has lost one of his partners, so he's really experienced it. So.
Well, finally, can you talk about the importance of the K-9 unit to the Shelby County Sheriff's Office?
It's valuable to the Sheriff's Department. These dogs assist us and deputies out there on building searches where we don't have to send a officer in to check these buildings, where if somebody's in there armed and stuff, that you're not risking a human life. They track down a fugitive that's run off from the guys that's really wanted for bad stuff, and so they're great assets to the Sheriff's Department.
Well, Sergeant Brenner and Patrolman Gaither, thank you so much for sharing with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Once again, I would like to thank all of my guests for sharing the importance behind dog training with us today. If you are looking for more information, please visit their websites at shelby-sheriff.org or WTNK9.com. I'm Jamaia Chase. From all of us at GHS-TV, thank you for watching Crosstalk, and I hope to see you again.